Hey, good day, everybody. This is Mr. Gunning, and we're going to look at a topic that most students have trouble with, and I really want you guys to laser in and focus on this one because solving quadratics by completing the square is a difficult topic. And it's not necessarily hard, but it's kind of difficult. So I'm going to go ahead and go over all of this. So there's a lot here. So we basically, if we're given an equation that's in the form of x squared plus bx, what you have to do is divide b by 2 and then square it. That's all you're doing. So like, for example, to complete the square for, let's say, x squared, and I want to go ahead and pull this out, x squared plus 6x. We want to complete the squared, so b, in this case, the x term is 6. So we'll do 6 divided by 2, which is 3, then 3 squared, which is 9. So we're going to add 9 to both sides, which means that when I factor this, I get x plus 3 squared. And so my factor is always the middle number divided by 2 when I complete the square. So let's do a few examples here. I'd do a negative one. It's kind of nice. I already did the x squared plus 6x. So let's do x squared minus 9x. I like that one. So b is 9. I'm not even going to keep the negative. It's technically negative 9, but for what we're doing here, it's going to be 9. B over 2 is 9 halves. I'm going to keep the fraction. And then b over 2 squared is 81 over 4. And so that is what we're going to add to both sides. And then when we factor it, I put the x, the first sign, and then whatever this b minus 2 is. So this one is 9 over 2. Put it squared at the end. Factored. The factoring part is very easy. Once you get completed the square, it's pretty much done. You got all the information that you need. So let's move on to this one. It says I want to solve x squared plus 16x minus 16x, equal to negative 15 by completing the square. I would probably move the 15 over, factor, but that's neither here nor there. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and write out the equation. Since I am completing the square, I'm going to put a little space in here. So I'm going to do x squared minus 16x plus, put my equal sign, then minus 15 and a plus. So now I look at my b. b is 16. b over 2 ends up being 8. b over 2 squared is 64. So now I put my 64 here, because that's what I'm adding there. So to keep it equal, what I add on the left side, I have to add on the right. And so now we factor. So remember that our factor, whenever we factor this down, is always going to be x, at least if x is whatever this first sign is, b over 2. And that's what I'm looking at here. And so now is I want to go ahead and factor that down. So this one is, I've got my squared. So now I'll do x, first sign, which is negative. b over 2 is 8 squared equals 15 from 64 ends up being, I think that's 49. So I'll take the square root of both sides, So remember, to have a square, we take the square root. And so I'll have x minus 8 equals plus or minus 7. So x minus 8 equals 7. And x minus 8 equals negative 7. So you add 8 to both sides on both equations. I end up with the first one up here. I get x equals 7 plus 8, which is 15. The other one is x equals positive 1. So my x's is x equals 15 or 1. So let's go ahead and do the next one. Now I notice I've got the 2 out from the x squared. First thing I want to do is, before I start doing anything, I want to get that x squared by itself. Because you cannot factor, and I'm just going to say this. You can't, if a is bigger than 1, or not, I should say not bigger than, but not equal to 1, then divide both sides by a to make a equal to 1. So I've got the 2x squared, so I'm going to divide everything over here by 2, and I'm going to divide this by 2. Well, the easy side of the 0 is divided by 2 is still 0. And so this 2 is dividing here, here, and here. So if you look at it, 2 divided by 2 is 1, so I've got x squared. 20 divided by 2 is 10x minus 8, which is 4. So now what I'll do is I'm going to actually separate it. So I'm going to move the 4 to the right side so we can get a little bit of space over here. So add 4 to both sides, okay? Because I know I told you we want it equal to 0, but in this case, when we're completing the square, we want the x squared and x by themselves, and then we're going to play with it from there. So my 4's cancel out on the left, so I'm left with x squared plus 10x. I'm going to put a plus here as a placeholder, equals 0 plus 4, which is 4, and I'm also going to add a placeholder there. So I look over on the left side, my b, the number on the x is 10, b over 2, so I take 10 divided by 2, which is 5, b over 2 squared is 25. So now I'm going to add the 25 to both sides. And now I'm going to factor it. Remember, it is x, set first sign, which is plus, b over 2, which is 5, squared. 4 plus 25 is 29. So now I'm going to have the square root, okay? And so with the square root, I'm going to remove the square. I have x plus 5 equals plus or minus the square root of 29. And 29 does not simplify. Well, I like this because I'm not going to break it up into 2 equations. I'm going to leave it as 1 and leave that plus or minus right there. Because all I have to do at this point is minus 5, and I've got x equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 29. So this is an exact value. If they ask me to estimate it, I'll do one of each. Negative 5 plus radical 29 and radical 5, or 5 minus radical 29. So I'll have one of each. So finding the maximum or minimum. So I want to change these into vertex form. Okay? I'm a little different on this. Because what you want to, and I like how this is done, but for A, what I want to look at is, let's do it this way. So y equals x squared plus 4x. And I want to put and since I'm writing it out, I know I'm going to complete the square to convert it back to vertex form. I'm going to put a plus parentheses around the first part there. Because remember, I want to make this an x squared plus 4x look like the left up here where I got the x squared plus 10x. And so we have the spot here. I've got minus 1. And whatever I'm going to add here, I'm also going to subtract. Because if I add a number and I subtract it, I'm essentially adding 0. So we want to find out in the parentheses, what's b? Well, b is 4 in that case. b over 2 is 2. Now we square it, is back to 4. So I want to put a 4 as an add and 4 as a subtract. And so now what I'll do is now I can simplify. Remember, it is y equals, I'll do x, first sign, which is positive, b over 2, which is 2, squared, minus 1 minus 4 is minus 5. And now we're in vertex form, okay? Now what I'll do is once I put that in vertex form, I can actually write down the vertex. Remember, the vertex is the number on the inside the parentheses and 1 on the outside. So the number on the inside is my x, so that's a plus 2. Remember, it's inside. We change the sign. We make it negative 2. So negative 2, negative 5. This is the vertex. And negative 5, and since the number out front is a 1, we know it's a positive number, so it's going to be a minimum. So negative 5 is a minimum. And I'll do the same thing with b. So I've got y. I'm going to change colors. Let me change it real quick. So y equals negative x squared plus 2x. And I'm going to go ahead and write this one out because I got a negative out front because I got to play with this a little bit. Plus 7. So what I want to do here with the negative out front, because I'm just going to group it because I really want to group these two together. So I want to pull the negative out front of those. So when I pull the negative out front, okay, so I've got y equals, I pull the negative out front, open my parentheses, the negative x squared becomes just a plain x squared, positive 2x now becomes a negative 2x. And so I want to put a plus here, leave me some space, then plus 7 and a minus. So I've got my room ready. So now let's go ahead and find what b over 2 squared is. So b in this case is 2. b over 2 is 1. So b over 2 squared is 1 squared, which is 1. So I'll put my 1 here, but that's a positive inside. I got a negative out front. So negative times a positive is a negative. So I've got minus, in this case, a minus 1. So now, I can go ahead and factor. I could say y equals minus, boom, x, first sign is negative, b over 2 is 1, squared, 7 minus a minus 1, which is plus 1, makes it an 8. So that's negative 1, 8. So my vertex is negative. We got the negative 1 here. Change the sign 1. Drop the number here, so it's negative. That's 1, 8. And since I got the negative out front, the graph points down. So I know 8 is a maximum. So this is a maximum point, and you can graph it and verify. Okay, so now what I want to do is we want to look at an example here, and I want to look at which functions could be. And then we're just like, we don't know, but we have these nice phrases here of could be. And so we want to look at what do I know about, and since I look at my equations, I got f, g, m, p, all of x. They're all either in vertex form or intercept form. So I want to look at, and it points down. So a couple things I know. One, A is negative. So we know A is negative. So the number out front has to be a negative. So I can just look, let's just go through these. A, the first negative 1/2, well, that works. For g of x, I got negative times this, so that works so far. M of x doesn't have a negative, so I know C is not one of my answers. D has a negative out front, so it's good. So let's look at the vertex. I got 2 in vertex, so A and B are still in vertex form. D is in intercept form. But let's look at the intercept form anyway. 2, my x-intercepts. Notice that my x-intercepts are here and here. They are both positive. Okay, so I need to know which ones are going to have positive x-intercepts. So if I look at D, that's a negative 2 on the inside. So that's going to be a positive, so that's good. Negative 8, that's positive. So I know D could be one of my answers. Okay, if it's in vertex form, my vertex is in quadrant 1, meaning that both x and y are positive. So I look up here. So I got a positive on the A. I know that's wrong because a positive on the inside, we switch it to a negative. That's not in first quadrant. So we know that's wrong. Let's look at B. The negative 5 here becomes a positive 5. This vertex is 5, 9. This one will work. So the answers on this one are B. The vertex is quadrant 1 and negative A. D, the x-intercepts are both positive and A is negative. So I'm going to go ahead and look at some examples here. So we want to look at an equation. Since the function y equals, and when we start doing real life, and I'm just going to forewarn you that when I do real life equations, I always do them where I can get them done the easiest. So now, y equals negative 16x squared plus 96x. I'm going to tell you right now, I probably will not do completing the square, but I can. And this one's a little bit different because I do want to do this one because this is a little different. So one thing that I want to do is we want to find the maximum height, because I will do this. And this is the easiest way to get the maximum height. And so I want to go ahead and start to rewrite some stuff. So y equals, I'm going to factor out this negative 16 out of both of those. So I'm going to write down negative 16 times. I have x squared here. So I'm going to write down my x squared, 16, because I divide that out. I got the negative, so this positive becomes a negative. 96 divided by 16 is 6x. And so I'm going to do a 6x plus, close, minus, and there's going to be a little bit of difference here. But we're going to go ahead and complete the square. So inside the parentheses, b is 6. So b over 2 is 3. B over 2 squared is 9. So I'm going to add, not just a blank. What did I do that for? I'm going to add 9. Then I'm going to do 9 times 16, which is 144. Okay. That's a positive negative, so it's a negative 144. I'll put my negative in there. So I got negative 144, kind of clean this up. I make that a positive. So the equation here is I've got y equals negative 16. I'm going to go ahead and factor this. So remember that is x, first sign negative, b over 2 is 3, squared, minus minus makes it a plus 144. And so what happens here is that now I can find the vertex. Remember, the vertex always tells me where the maximum is. So my maximum height is the y-coordinate of the vertex. Well, the vertex is 3, negative 3, which makes it a positive 3 because it's inside. The number on the outside, 144, is also going to be the same sign. So that's 3, 144. So the maximum height is the y-coordinate, which is 144 feet. And so the axis of symmetry is x equals the x-coordinate of the vertex, which is 3, and that is the time the rocket takes to reach its, I don't want to write its, max height. So that's what that means there. And so what I want to look at the last page is I've got this here. It says, use a chalkboard to create a chalkboard on a door. The area of the chalkboard is 6 square feet and has a uniform border as shown. Find the width of the border to the nearest inch. So I know that my chalkboard here has an area, and I'm going to write this out, has an area of 6 square feet. And so the area of the door, okay, the door area is 21 square feet because that's 7 times 3, length times width. So to get 21, so remember to get the length here. So let's see, the area is